So, let's see, where's the full screen? Okay, so computer rig control. Some of you have been playing with it. Most of you have rigs that will handle it, and it's kind of a nice thing. So we're connecting a radio to a computer for the purpose of reading and changing the radio settings. Rig control became practical when we started getting digital VFOs and computers that control all the functions inside the radio. Most every radio manufactured in the last 20, 30 years is a digital VFO, meaning that your dial is just adjusting a computer inside the radio. It's not physically moving the plates of a variable capacitor. And most radios are like that. If you've got a digital display on your computer, then you have a digital VFO. The old radios with the analog had the line and it looked almost like a slide rule that was moving, physical pieces moving. You can't really do this with those. So one of the things we do want to do is distinguish between this and remote operation, like what Adam does, where he's got the whole radio someplace way far away. Rig control is part of it, but in remote operation, you're actually also sending the voice or the digital signals or whatever. This is just mainly local and mainly controlling things on the radio, like the frequency, the mode, some of filter settings, other kinds of settings, Dolby noise reduction, those kinds of things.
Speaking of Adam, he sends his regards.
Okay. So what you're doing is you're setting buttons, band settings. For example, on my radio, I can put in the filters. I can adjust the shift. I can adjust the mode. I can adjust the band frequency things and some other things.
What kind of a program do you have in your computer to indicate?
Oh, John, you're right. I forgot to ask this. If you have a question that is, are you going to talk about, or if you have a question like Ernest just asked, hold it. Give us a chance to do the presentation. If you have a specific technical question, about something we're talking about at the moment, then ask it. Okay, so, most people are doing this over a short distance. The software will, not only can you set things on the radio, but the software will monitor the radio and display back the current status. So if you turn the VFO knob, you'll see the frequency changing. So the software's always got an idea where you are, what mode you're in, etc. What it doesn't do, it doesn't communicate content and remote control of the radio at a distance. For example, the ability to turn the radio on and off, which is something Adam has. So we're not talking about that right now. If you do a lot of contesting, and I'll show you an example in a minute or a little bit later on, logging becomes a lot easier, because what you can do is at a first level, if you're recording it and you're logging, it will automatically pick up the radio from the radio, the mode, the band, and the frequency. So all you have to do is type in the call sign of the station you work. You don't have to type in all that other information. It may pick up the power setting also, so you don't have to do that. On some radios, it'll pick up the S-meter reading, so you don't have to type in your S-meter reading. And it gets even better as you go down the line. Which is great for contesting, because it means you're spending less time trying to key into your log while you're also trying to get your next station. Enhanced operation, you can do a lot more. For example, with the digital modes, with PSK, for example, you have to find that station, that signal that you want to talk to, and you can sit there very carefully trying to adjust the VFO dial, or you can just do a click on a waterfall image on your radio, on your computer, and the frequency gets changed right to that signal, and you're into operation. And like I said, it's part of remote operation. So what are some of the things that it makes possible? This isn't even the best stuff, but this is some of the stuff that Andy showed us. On the left, somebody has created a very specific control box for themselves that has buttons for everything that they're going to want to do. So they don't have to be looking at the panel. I got to press a button here, got to press a button there. Sometimes with these tightly built panels, I got to reach in under the VFO dial and press something. And if I'm not careful, I'm going to turn the dial. So that person created his own control box. You can buy a control box for the KX3 on the right. So the most important features, also on a lot of radios now, you got to do 2 or 3 button presses to get something done, to bring up a menu and go to a particular setting and adjust that setting. For example, with filters. On the KX3, you can set this control box up so you get the most commonly used things are right there, 1 button press. And then this thing in the bottom is a display on the computer of all of the important settings on your radio. Instead of having to look, again, press buttons to see different settings on your radio, instead of not necessarily knowing the setting of a particular button, that is a display. That one comes from, that's the front panel on Ham Radio Deluxe. So it's displaying for, he didn't say what radio that is, but it's displaying everything you might want to know about the settings of your radio. Makes it a lot easier to operate. The typical setup is a serial connection between the radio and the computer. Why serial? Because that's what the manufacturer started building 20, 30 years ago, and most of them haven't really changed that yet. A couple of the newer radios have changed it. They've gone to other modes, but most of it is serial connection. These days, most computers don't have serial ports, so you have to get involved with the joys of a serial to USB converter. We'll talk about that in a minute, because it is serial communications. Since it is serial communications, it means that communications is happening every so often. You get to control how often that happens, but if you set the value too high, you're starting to interfere with the radio because the radio is busy signaling to you instead of actually being a radio. If you set it too low, you can get a delay. So I turned my VFO, and a couple of seconds later, the software finally realized I turned my VFO. So you come up with you play with it with your radio, you find out settings that are good, like once every 1/5 of a second, once every 1/10 of a second. But that's something that you wind up having to adjust. So serial is the main thing. We're starting to see USB connectors. Some of the new radios like Flex, the ICOM, the 7600.
The FTDX 3000.
Okay, FTDX 3000, where they come with a USB instead of a serial connector, or some other weird connector. Now, I have an FT450. The FT450 has a serial connector on the back, so I actually had to go get a serial to USB adapter for that radio, even though my FT897, which is an older radio, does not have a serial connector on the back. I don't know why Yaesu decided to go back with a serial connector. Wired Ethernet is rare. You're not seeing that unless people home build. There are 3 main computer interface schemes. Oops, I got these out of order. I'm missing a page. Oh no, here we go. There are 3 main protocols. The Kenwood-Elcraft protocol, meaning the commands that they send, the list of commands that they send, or receive, that the radio can send or receive, depending on how old your radio is, depending on how expensive it is. The number of things that you can control is limited. So on an FT450, I can control the frequency, I can control the band, I can control the filter, narrow to wide, I can control the mode. That's about it. On more sophisticated radios, newer radios, you can control all sorts of settings: contour filters, notch filters, um, frequency shift, receive offset, all those kinds of things can be controlled. It just depends on what the manufacturer has built into that radio as the capabilities of what you can talk.
Can you key the microphone from the computer as well, or?
Not on mine. You can on, well,
Some you can.
on some you can. Yes, I take that back. On some, even on mine, you can. You can key the microphone. Yeah, I forgot about that. You can key the push to talk. Yes.
Okay, so your radio can be here, and you can be at the computer over here.
Right.
You don't have to go back and forth.
Right.
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 Yeah,
So.
the Yaesu does it.
Yes, right, the Yaesu does that. So the three major interfacing schemes are the Kenwood L-Craft, Yaesu, which they call computer-aided transceiver, and the ICOM. So how ICOM does their interface, what kind of commands they will allow, how they structure those commands is quite different than what Yaesu does, which is quite different from Kenwood, and L-Craft borrow the same setup. The ICOM CIV, the V stands for the fifth version. There was a fourth version, a third version, and they're not compatible. All right. So it's a serial interface. It's a simple technology. We've said it's been supplanted by USB. There's still lots of hardware that uses that serial interface. And of course, for modern computers without built-in serial ports, we need the famous serial to USB adapter. And everybody has their horror stories about the serial to USB adapters not working. The primary problem is that most of the cheap serial to USB adapters out there run off what's called a Prolific chip. Prolific is a company in Taiwan. The People's Republic of China decided to go after Prolific. They flooded the market with counterfeits. So Prolific changed their chip, changed the commands into their chip, so that drivers for the counterfeit Prolific chips won't work. So you buy a cheap cable off the internet, you plug it in, the Prolific driver that comes with Microsoft Windows is written for the real Prolific chip. It won't work with this thing. And you buy this thing and goddamn, this thing doesn't work.
Why do you say avoid prolific?
Huh?
Why does it say avoid prolific?
Because it's not worth the pain.
I'm using a Staples
Yeah.
USB to my.
The GigaWare one?
I don't know what it was.
Was it the $40 one?
I needed to run my flu calibration box.
Was it the $40 one?
RS-232.
Yeah. Was it the $40 Staples?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
It's not a
worked
Prolific chip. That's
Yeah, it
why.
worked fine.
I put that in, avoid Prolific, because you're going to have problems. You can, if you go to the Miklor site, MIKLOR, which is the people who are the experts on the Chinese radios, and they have up on their site the old Prolific driver that works with the counterfeit chips. But the problem is, every time Windows does an update to the Prolific driver, it installs the new driver, which doesn't work with the old chip. And what Prolific has been doing is about every month they issue an update. So about every month, your Prolific chip, your cheap Prolific chip, not really counterfeit Prolific chip cable, is going to stop working. And you got to go and reinstall the old driver. And it's just a pain in the rear, especially if you're sitting there, you want to get something done, I got to go worry about updating this thing again, and then I can finally get on the air. There is this trip light that a lot of people bought early on when the whole Prolific problem started. They were very reliable for a while, and then their last couple of products that have come out have been impossible. You install the driver, it doesn't work. You go to their website for the updated driver, you download it, and your antivirus starts giving you, basically, help, the sky is falling kinds of things, kinds of messages. I mean, it isn't just a virus. This is like, I've seen some of the antivirus go, oh, no, this is too much for me. You go away. So I don't know what the hell's going on. That is, by the way, a continuing problem with the drivers and a lot of these things. On the Prolific, be careful on the Radio Shack. You go to get an updated driver, you download it, you're downloading a zip file. When you unzip the zip file, there's another zip file in there.
Oh.
When you go to unzip that inner zip file, your antivirus blows up. It goes, hell no, the sky is falling. This is really bad stuff, stay away from it. And it will delete all the files associated with this driver. I don't know why these people have picked these serial USB drivers as a delivery mechanism, but it's a real problem. So, like I said, you can work with the cheap ones that you get off the internet, but you constantly have to go back to the old Prolific driver, get an expensive one. It's worth it. What's the one that you use that works? The type begins with a T.
I don't, I went through it all a few years ago, now I've forgotten.
Okay.
That thing's working and that.
I can't remember the
Went on
name,
to
but there's
other
one.
things.
There's
What
one
do you
that
call cheap and what do you call not cheap?
under $20. Some of them under 20. Some of them are like $3, $5, $2. You know that's going to be a problem.
Network solution, it does work though.
It does work, but you're going to have to reinstall the driver every couple of weeks. As far as the cables themselves go, most of the rig manufacturers have cables for $50 or $60 that otherwise would be a $5 cable if you buy it at a Radio Shack. RT Systems has a very good. They're the people who make the programming software for a lot of radios. You go on eBay, you could be getting a good cable, you could be getting a piece of junk. So
Same on Amazon. I
Yeah.
lost today because I got a bad USB cable. It functioned, but
yeah, the cables themselves. I'm not talking about the adapters now. The cables may be bad.
yeah.
So you want to spend the money, get a decent cable. You don't have to get the manufacturer's cable. Go to RT Systems. Go to an electronic supply house. Go to HRO, Ham Radio Outlet. Those guys. Buy your cables there. Bucks come. Buy your cables there. You'll spend a little bit more. It's worth it. You'll get a reliable cable.
There's one point. The voltage swings from the standard RS-232 are not the specification on the rig sometimes, and they're sort of overlapping, so you might have a situation where it works or it might not work just because the voltage levels are just a little different.
No, the manufacturer should have built their connector. Now you're talking about the radio manufacturer
Yeah,
not having done the job.
There's a complication about, because usually the RS-232 things, I forgot exactly the details, but I have run into it.
I've never heard of anybody having this problem, but if you have a problem, talk to Fred. All right, you can wire your own. As Andy says, don't be afraid. I'm afraid anytime I have to get into one. I've built a K2, I've built a K1, I've built a whole bunch of other stuff. But when I have to get into wiring those damn little DB9s, I'm afraid. One thing is you can get them, when you want to make your own, you can get the DB9s and the RJ45 modular jacks that do not need soldering. Now you're talking about something, that might work. Because when you have to solder those DB9s, you're undoubtedly going to melt something in there. It's just the worst thing to have to solder. It's worse than dealing with surface mount. But now you can build your own. You can get some decent cable, build your own, and do it without soldering. Then you got a fighting chance to have something good. This is Andy's opinion, but I've seen this concept repeated a number of places. The ICOM is a difficult one. It's got active electronics in the interface cable, so you have to buy their interface cable at $60 or $70.
Yeah, that's where the voltages get changed.
Okay, it cannot talk to a computer without this adapter. You can get a converter box from them. There are some off-brand boxes that you can get, but built in somebody's backyard, sold on eBay. Yeah. And This was the classic in the ham radio world, typical kind of thing in the ham radio world. Each vendor saying, I'm going to make something that's totally incompatible with the other vendors, so that people are locked into my product line. And it's terrible. So, example of commands. Look at the Kenwood command. You want to set a frequency, and it's a fairly simple command. You see the 72050 in there, right? You look at the Yazoo, basically same kind of thing, just not as many leading zeros. Now look at the ICOM command. Okay. If you look, the 7205 is there,
Backwards.
72050 backwards. And by the way, this is the same thing that bit the ass off of Connect Systems. When they allowed the Chinese to do the design, they allowed their Chinese partner to actually design the data storage inside the radio. And that's what their Chinese partner did to them, same as they did ICOM. And then when they wanted to go switch to a different partner, when they wanted to change some internal circuitry in their radios, Connect Systems, to go from the 700 to the 750, it was a disaster for a while, because nobody could figure out the coding structure of what the Chinese had done to them internally within the radio. So how do you convert the data?
Maybe it's Hebrew, from right to
Well,
left.
that's part of what they did, was right to left, was this right to left kind of thing. They did some funny things with decimal points. Finally, they tried to do it themselves, and then they crowdsourced it, and they just put out a file saying, here's what the data shows when you're looking in the software. Here's the data as recorded. Can somebody please help us figure out, how you get from one to the other? This thing that says the frequency is 446.750. Here's the data that's inside the radio. Where does it say 446.750? It took about 6 months of crowdsourcing, but people figured it out, and then they were able to write a converter so that they could convert to the people from the 700 to the 750. So this is the kind of thing you have to be careful of, because their original Chinese partner wanted to make sure they couldn't get away from it. All right, change operating mode, or get operating mode. MD or MD0, mode, okay? The ICOM command 04. That's very obvious. So what are some of the software features made possible by grid control? We've kind of talked about this already. Point and click to change frequency, especially when using its spotting database. So you've got your spotting database. Here's somebody I want to work. You click on it. The software in your computer immediately changes your radio to that frequency. Position the rotor for the beam, especially when using a spotting database. The spotting databases typically have the Maidenhead grid locator of the spot. So it knows where to point the beam. It knows where you are. It knows where the other station is. When you click on it, your rotor starts moving. If you've got a beam, it sets it to the right position. Record the band mode frequency when logging. Make menu control features more accessible, and allows use of external tuning and selection drives, like we saw some examples. Some of the software that provides for interfacing, Ham Radio Deluxe, Windows, FLDigi in general does it, CW Skimmer, WinLog 32, some of the contesting software, N1MM, N3FJP. I'm going to talk about what Emily does with her setup in a minute, but she goes right from the spot to the QSO, and everything's in the log. All she has to do is hit the carriage return, so she can focus on actually making the call. Okay, well, the FLDigi, Whisper, WSPR, JT65, they all have the ability to control the RID. Well, let me go back a step. Now, in each piece of software, they have some drivers in there that convert from how the software represents the information to the command structure that's needed for your radio. In FLDigi, it's called RigCat. So they've written something that knows how to interpret what's in FLDigi and pass information to FLDigi, and knows how to put out the correct commands for a Yaesu FT450, or a Yaesu FT897, or an ICOM whatever, or whatever. So any of the software, you have to get their library of commands. Now, there's a group that has built something called HamLib, or HamLib. It was written by somebody, and it's one program that works with a lot of the software, and it works with a lot of the radios. I'm not quite sure what the advantage is, since the vendors of the software don't charge you for the drivers to be able to interface to the radios. So I'm not sure what advantage you have getting somebody else writing this, unless you want to have fun and write your own. But it's an option. So here's Emily's situation. She's got the spotting. Actually, I used a picture from DXlog there because I couldn't find the picture from HRD. But HRD has spotting capability in it now. Sorry, not HRD. N3FJP. The N3FJP standard software has spotting. So she's looking at the spot.
What does that mean?
What? Spotting? Okay. Spotting is a group of sites that collect information about what stations have been seen on what frequency. You can get the internet-only spots, but you can't really interface with them, where you go to their website and they show you continuous running. Here's what's been seen. So, here's somebody from Madagascar, or her, I should say. It's funny, a lot of them refer to it as seen and not heard. It's interesting. So I'm looking at the list. Oh, look, there's somebody from Madagascar. They're on 14.235. I need Madagascar. I'm going to go to 14.235 and see. There's also people who do that as, basically they deliver the data down to your computer, the software that runs on your computer. It's basically telnet kinds of things. So you now have it on your computer. You have the data in a program on your computer. It's displaying in real time. And that's nice because that you can connect up to your software. If your software allows it, you can connect that up to your software so that when you click on that spot, it actually goes and changes the radio for you. Now, HRD has this design so that the spot, you take the spot, HRD, I keep saying HRD, N3FJP is your logbook. So N3FJP is showing you spots, and which ones do you need? I don't have Madagascar in 20 meters, so it shows up in red. So you click on the spot, it sets your radio to 14.235, it moves your rotor, it puts everything in the logbook, waiting for you to actually just hit the enter key that says, yeah, I made the connection. I made the QSO. Once you've made the QSO, so all you're doing is hitting an enter key or some key pattern. You're not sitting there after the QSO typing out the call sign and the time and the frequency and the mode and the power and all that kind of stuff. It records it, immediately logs it with EQSL and Logbook of the World, which are the two big online QSL features. And with N3FJP, you can even print out your QSL cards to be mailed out. It prints the labels for your QSL cards. So now,
into the Logbook of the World, too.
Yes, I said Logbook of the World, EQSL Logbook of the World.
Does it automatically update it to the Logbook of the World? Or?
Yes, it automatically sends it up to Logbook of the World. Actually, I think with Logbook of the World, because they have that funny software there, it puts it into the pending folder, Logbook of the World, and you have to double-click on Logbook of the World, and it says, and tell it, yeah, okay, send. And it'll send whatever's in its queue. For EQSL, it just sends it sends it up there. So you've now gotten rid of most of the administrivia, secretarial work involved in doing all this, and you can focus on actually trying to get the station.
I'll write a program and you don't even have to be there and it does it all for you.
Well, you still have to make the contact, yeah.
Well, it does the contact for you.
With a couple of radios, you can even program in standard offsets. So when somebody's doing a off, up 10 or up 5, so it's one click and it automatically does up 5. So that when you're transmitting up 5. And one of them, I think it's N3FJP, actually now has a random factor in there because when somebody says up 5, you don't want it to go up exactly 5 because there are going to be like 5,000 other stations right on that frequency. You want to be right around that. So you program into it, I want a random factor plus or minus X number of hertz. So it'll be slightly off, slightly above, slightly below. So it is literally one button. You click the one you want. Now, once you've worked that station, your logbook is updated, so the next time you see a spot for that station in Madagascar on 20 meters, it shows up and says, you've already worked Madagascar. It will show, you've already worked Madagascar, you've already worked this station, and whether or not you've gotten a QSL. Because if you haven't gotten a QSL, it says, nope, you still need a QSL. So, here's another guy, Bing, I'm going to work him. And now I can focus on working the guy.
The software or whatever, the spotting stuff does not tell you whether he's up 5 or when they're running split.
Some of it does now. It used to be in the spotting software, it used to be a comment, which doesn't, well, even as a comment, if all you have to do is click one little button, with your mouse, click one little thing, it goes up 5, that's not so hard. As opposed to what I have to do, because I don't have anything like that. And all right, so I got to go to the frequency, I got to press this button that sets the receive and transmit frequencies the same. Then I got to go over the B, to the B VFO, set that up 5, then switch back to the A VFO so that I'm listening on the A, and then press the button to tell it to do split operations. By that time, he's done 20 other QSOs and he's off the air. Now it's literally one click, the split is set, and away you go. I don't know how many I've lost because I got to go through all that, and I always manage to press the wrong button, and now I'm on the wrong frequency for receive, and I got to go. So it makes that life a lot easier. So if you get up to Emily's station and watch her operate, she's on the air constantly. There's something I need, click, N1DID, N1DID. Moving around maybe, moving the spot around, not the spot, but the transmit around a little bit, adjusting filters, adjusting power, doing the things that is ham radio, not the things that's administrivia. And she gets a hell of a lot of contacts that way. And that's it. Andrew thanks you.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Comment.
Yes.
I set up the ham radio deluxe on my FTDX 3000. Well, first I tried to set up the FTDX 3000, and if you ever do it with a Yaesu, be sure you absolutely follow the instructions, because the USB driver is extremely tricky to get it to properly load. They're
On the radio itself.
Yeah, they have software that you have to, Yaesu has software packages. Never plug your radio in first and go, oh, I'm gonna see what happens. No, that'll totally ruin it to the point that you're gonna have to unload your USB drivers and start all over again. I ended up chasing my tail for several days until I finally put in Windows 10 on my computer and then follow the instructions to the letter. So just be real careful.
So what you're saying is that the radio vendors have not learned how to make stuff that's
Totally
bulletproof.
compatible. No, they
Compatible,
have a very
bulletproof.
special way of using that USB in a non-standard. You have to download a specific program from another manufacturer who makes
Great.
stuff. And so then you have to look in your, you know, in your computer, in my computer, and you can find the drivers, you know, where you would look for your serial ports and all that. You would have to make sure that it's loaded before you even attempt to plug in the radio, or you're gonna go like, oh, shoot, then you're gonna start all over again.
I believe that the expression is RTFM.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds like pepper.
There's.
But don't worry, everybody here would do the same thing. Oh, I got the new radio, plug it in, start listening.
Yeah.
Oh, look at the manual. We did that today. Tina and I bought a simple little shredder. I mean, it's a paper shredder, right? And it would not start. We couldn't get it to start. Turn it on, plug it in, we're checking it all.
So you
blah, blah,
need
blah,
the key.
Read the manual. Oh, you got to it's got this lockout key thing.
Right,
that,
mine is missing.
And there's the.
I think
It just needs. There's just a little switch in there. All you need is a piece of plastic about the right size. Like take
Jam it
a
in
credit
there.
card, cut it in half the long way.
Yeah.
You know, old credit card.
Jam it in there.
Put it in there. It's fine. That's all it does. That's all that thing does.